Hello and welcome to a book review by Warhammer 40k bookreviews.com. Today I'm going to be talking about The Unremembered Empire, a novel in the Horus Heresy series. Before I get into the book itself, I want to touch on a question that I was thinking reading this book. And it's about the Primarchs. How strong is a Primarch really? Is he a being of near divine power, able to hold a charging titan, dodge flying bullets with ease, and basically be all but unstoppable on the field of battle? Or is he merely an extremely strong and gifted space marine with the ability to outthink most opponents and react quicker than any mortal foe, but still very much a being of squishy, soft flesh, able to be hacked up and blown apart by the same means that one would kill a power-armored legionnaire? In The Unremembered Empire, it seems that the answer is a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B, which annoyed me and my love for Warhammer 40k fluff to the point of almost making me want to stop reading the book. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's take a few steps back and look at what Dan Abnett serves up for us in this entry in the Horus Heresy series. The Horus Heresy, as you know, takes place 10,000 years before the current 40k universe, during the great treachery of War Master Horus, a naughty boy that turned to chaos and rose up in rebellion against the Emperor, taking with him several of the Space Marine legions. It's a time of massive battles where Primarchs, the incredible powerful sons of the Emperor, made their mark on the history of mankind. In The Unremembered Empire, Dan Abnett manages to cram 5 different Primarchs into one book and somehow still make it feel like an underwhelming experience. The book takes place mainly on Mcragge, capital world of the very noble and slightly boring Ultramarine Legion. After a great battle against the traitor legion, the Wordbearers, on the world of Calth, the Ultramarine Empire has been isolated from the rest of the Empire by a gigantic warp storm, which is like a big hurricane but full of demons that want to nom nom on your mortal soul. By using a ancient Xenos device, the Ultramarines Primarch Roboute Guilliman is able to create a beacon in the warp that allows other ships lost in the previously mentioned storm of badness to navigate their way to Mcragge. It doesn't take long before Mcragge is filled with survivors from the Istvan V Dropsite massacre, and eventually the full force of the Dark Angels Legion arrives, led by the Lion himself, who is the Primarch of the Dark Angels. Now, just having 2 Primarchs in one book is already a somewhat unusual occurrence, but at this point Abnett has clearly opened the Primarch closet up wide and decided it's full of shiny things that should be in his book. So we also get treated to the Night Haunter, the emo Primarch of the Night Lord's Legion. But wait, there's more. If you act now, you'll also get Vulcan, Primarch of the Salamanders, who got tortured horribly in the very not so good at all book Vulcan Lives. And finally, at the end of the book, there's also a small guest appearance by yet another Primarch, because at this point we're just running down the list of Primarchs and stuffing them in there, so why the hell not? Now, the actual story of the Unremembered Empire revolves around Guilliman's efforts to preserve the Imperium by whatever means necessary. And this includes the consideration of declaring his Ultramarines Empire as the new Imperium, an act that naturally worries because it would be seen as another big betrayal like the one committed by Horus himself. But when the Nighthaunter decides to drop in on Mcragge and start slashing up people and bathing in blood, presumably while citing self-made poems about the futility of life and the sweet embrace of the night, Gulliman's plans are interrupted, and he and the Lion must try to deal with this new threat. The Unremembered Empire also continues another story from the book Vulcan Lives, which is the story of the immortal John Grammaticus and his efforts to kill Vulcan as part of a Xenos organization known as the Cabal's plan to save the galaxy from the powers of chaos. Much of the story in the Unremembered Empire is quite interesting, actually, but there simply seems to be too much going on. Abnett clearly wanted to pack the book with references to other books and short stories in the Horus Heresy series, and he even mentioned this himself in the afterwards section of the book. But it ended up feeling forced and left me almost short of breath as I tried to jog my memory and drag up the many references to other books. My other big annoyance is the portrayal of the Primarchs themselves, as I mentioned in the beginning of this review. I understand that it's hard to find a line when writing about Primarchs where they come off as incredibly powerful, but not just immortal supermen able to fell the mightiest enemy with a stern look. However, when one Primarch is almost murdered by 10 Space Marines, and another is able to kill off a full squad and flip over a Land Raider without even scratching his armor, then I have a problem with the writing. Is there supposed to be such an incredible difference in the ability and strength between the Primarchs that this disparity makes sense? That's not really my understanding of the Warhammer 40k lore. Also, without spoiling too much, I find it very peculiar that Vulcan has seemingly undergone a big change since his experience in the book Vulcan Lives, even though this change was never set up at all in the book. This again feels like Abnett forced in a reference to a previous Horus Heresy book, but either did not spend enough time researching what exactly happens in his book, or did not bother or have find the time to explain how we got from the end of that book to the state of affairs that happens in the Unremembered Empire. Underneath the hectic and busy jumble of storylines, there are some really interesting passages in the Unremembered Empire. I definitely found it interesting to find out more of what happened to the Ultramarines during the Horus Heresy after the great betrayal at Calth. It's just a shame that this entertainment is fouled by the bitter black lumps of suspect pacing and Primarchs that don't really feel like Primarchs. I could go on criticizing the Unremembered Empire. I could tell you the whole book ultimately falls flat because the events are ultimately not really relevant in the grand scheme of the Horus Heresy, or how I found it very strange that the Space Wolves sent to stand watch over Guilliman does not react to his use of librarians and Xenos technology. But I think you've gathered by now that I didn't actually much care for the Unremembered Empire at all. The Unremembered Empire looked set to be a really interesting book and is written by one of my favorite 40k authors. Abnett also wrote Eisenhorn, which is my favorite Warhammer 40k book of all time. But in the end, I find myself trying to unremember this book. I give The Unremembered Empire 1 out of 5 chainswords.